This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
You are listening to In a City Like Yours, a semi-monthly podcast featuring interesting people with interesting life stories. This podcast may contain language and/or subject matter not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm your host, Michael G. Moore. Please visit our website at inacitylikeyours.com. That's INACITYLIKEYOURS.com for links to our social media, all popular podcast platforms, and links of interest pertaining to all episodes. On this episode, Monday tells a story of growing up with three talented musical parents who are all phenomenal, legendary jazz musicians. She followed in their footsteps and studied the flute and piccolo. After a car accident damaged below her lower lip, she had to move from flutist and piccolo player to a vocal performer. At 23, she was discovered by a film producer from Japan and cast in a major motion picture, receiving awards for her performance. She never strayed far from her musical endeavors and is a jazz performer to this day. After the break, Jeff tells his story of a death in his family, which changed the way he viewed the world. Later, he moved from a small town in Maine called Buxton to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career, becoming a successful character performer. Here are their stories.
Hi, I'm Monday Michiru. Monday is actually my first name, and Michiru is actually my middle name, Michiru. It's Japanese, and it was a name given to me by my mother, who realized that she wanted to give me a name that would encompass the fact that I am of two heritages, which is Japanese and also American, Italian. My last name, Mariano, well, that's pretty Italian sounding. So she thought, okay, we'll name her Monday because she's born on a Monday, and let's give her a middle name that's going to be Japanese and also starts with M. So I have 3 M's in my name. There you go. My boyfriend calls me Triple M. So my real name is really Monday Michiru Mariano, but professionally I just go by Monday Michiru. So I am born in Tokyo, Japan, but my mother's side of the family, my mother being Japanese, is from Kyushu, which is the southern part of Japan. And our family is from a tiny little village that is renowned throughout Japan as the onsen, which is the hot spring capital of Japan, called Beppu. It's a very, very nice, quaint, charming little town. Anyhow, but I'm born in Tokyo. For the first year, I was actually stuck in the hospital because this is in 1963, and my mother thought that the best way to keep me alive was to keep me in the hospital. And that's not to say that she didn't have confidence in herself as a mother, but during that time, there were terrible outbreaks of the influenza, so she thought that it would be best for me to be raised by the doctors and nurses. And so here I am alive today, so I guess it worked. Anyhow, but I grew up a little bit in Beppu, which is the place I just mentioned with the hot springs. And I also grew up a little bit in New York and also a little bit in Los Angeles. So since I mentioned my mother, I should mention about my parents. I have 3, and by 3 I mean my father and stepfather included, 3 wonderful parents who are all like phenomenal, legendary jazz musicians. Like not just 1, but 3. My mother is, her name is Toshiko Akiyoshi, and she is the first Japanese, not just the first woman, but the first Japanese to cross over from Japan to America. She was invited by the Berklee School of Music to attend their school and to learn jazz. This was the year 1956, and Berklee had started a program where they wanted people from other countries to represent their country and to learn jazz in the home ground of jazz, which would be America. And certainly Berklee was probably the only school of jazz at the time. And the idea was that they then would go back to their countries and bring the language of jazz and sort of be the ambassadors of jazz. So my mother was chosen to be the representative for Japan, but she stayed because at the school was my father, Charlie Mariano. He actually is one of the founders of the Schillinger House, which was a school of jazz and improvisation that was started by my father and several other jazz musicians who lived in the Boston area. And that eventually morphed into Berklee. So you could say he's sort of one of the founders of Berklee. Charlie Mariano he's already passed away, an alto saxophone player. At that time, he was probably renowned for his great solos with Stan Kenton. Is that right? Oh my God. I'm going to have to relook that because I'm feeling like I got it all wrong. Anyhow, he was a really, really great, amazing musician. And later in his life, he, really fell in love with India and started to learn this Indian instrument. It's a reed instrument and I can't remember the name of it. But it's like a reed instrument that makes these really glorious sound. And he sort of became renowned for that. Anyhow, so backtracking to Charlie. So Charlie and my mother met there, and that's where, seeds of me grew from there. And, as time would have it, they divorced, and then she remarried. And this is my stepfather, Lou Tabakin. Lou Tabakin is another phenomenal saxophone player. He plays the tenor sax, but he also plays the flute and is probably one of the most proficient doublers. And I hate to use the word doubler because doubler connotates that if you're a reed musician, you're going to sort of play one better, usually the sax, and the flute is like an afterthought. But in Lou's case, he first learned to play the flute classically, super trained, went to conservatory and everything, and then moved on into tenor sax. So he's amazing at both, has been voted 1 million times by Downbeat magazine as, greatest flute player, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, so those are my parents. So if I didn't go into music and went into something like becoming a lawyer or a doctor, it would have been really funny. I'm sure they would have enjoyed it. But as luck would have it, I really loved music. Not necessarily jazz. I mean, I love jazz, but I really loved music. So I ended up picking up first the harmonica when I was in school in Japan, and then graduating to recorder. I loved the recorder. I just thought it was the greatest instrument ever. And Lou, at the time, he was my father. He taught me the fingerings because the recorder and the saxophone are the very same. And then from there, a few years later at school, that's when the American schools usually have their music programs, and you pick your instrument and you end up in a band or something. So we lined up, and I think I chose some instrument that was a little too loud or a little too big, and my parents said, "No, you are not playing that." I can't remember what it was. Trumpet? Maybe, I don't know, cello, whatever it was, they said no. And so they chose for me to play the flute. So I picked up the flute, and wouldn't you know, I happened to be sort of good at it. Oh boy, that sounds really big-headed, but it's true. You either have a talent for something or you don't. And I had natural talent. So I went on to, win a lot of awards, as I was doing a lot of competitions and stuff in school, and I ended up getting a scholarship to the Interlochen Arts Academy, which is a really wonderful school in Michigan. A lot of their students go on to, symphonies and, opera singers and whatnot. So we have some really wonderful alumni that come out of there. Anyhow, as soon as I found out about the program, I thought this is the school I need to go to. So my parents obliged me. I got the scholarship, which was great. And I went to the school, graduated from there. Now this is a preparatory college, meaning it's really a high school. So the idea is you go to that school and eventually you're going to go into a great conservatory. Being a flute player, I wanted to study at that time. This is 1981 when I graduated. At the time, I wanted to study with Julius Baker. He was probably considered the greatest flute player classically in America. He played with the New York Symphony. He taught at the top conservatories, Juilliard, Curtis in Philadelphia, New England Conservatory, I think. I think. I know I definitely auditioned for there. I think it was because of him. Maybe it was somebody else. Anyhow, but Manhattan School of Music, and some other school, I can't remember. Anyhow, so I auditioned for all those schools, and I got into the waiting list at Juilliard. Darn, I couldn't get in. Curtis, they didn't even look at me. Darn it. But I got into Manhattan School of Music. Yay! However, the scholarship was only $500. That's like enough to buy, I don't know, one book. So, my parents are like, you need like a bigger scholarship to go to college. It's just too expensive for us. All right, fine. So I decided to wait one more year. And during that year, I stayed at home. I worked, little odd and end jobs here and there, and I practiced. And I thought, all right, next year I'm gonna nail it. I'm just gonna be so good that they just can't say no. 2 weeks before the auditions, mind you, I've already applied. I've sent in my money. I've got my ticket to go to New York because I was living in LA at the time. And 2 weeks before, I got into a car accident. This car accident was the kind that, I lost teeth. I was limping. Yeah, back then, this is again, 1981, 82 by then. We weren't as smart about seat belts. And I didn't have my seatbelt on. I was going downhill. It was in traffic because I was on my way to work. And, probably going 15, 20 miles an hour. But when you're going downhill, you could sort of catch some momentum. And I put my foot on the brake because in front of me is a Mercedes. And I'm thinking, let me brake a little bit. Oh, there's no brake. What? There is no brake. And I suddenly panicked into this, what am I going to do? I'm going to get into an accident. I cannot smash into that Mercedes because we can't afford it. That's all I'm thinking, the money aspect of it. Oh my God, they're going to come after us. So I looked for a wall, and there was this house with a very big, firm concrete wall. And I thought, if I smash into that, I think it'll stop the car and it won't really cause too much damage to the house. But, gee, what about me? I'm not thinking about that. All I'm thinking is, I just can't smash into the Mercedes. So I smashed into the wall, and I was driving at the time a Datsun. A Datsun nowadays is called a Nissan. So being a Japanese car, it's light, meaning it folds up, meaning it is not going to be so solid. So, it was by then, the momentum had maybe gone up to 30, 35 miles an hour. So it was a pretty bad crash. Like I said, there were some lost teeth. I ended up in the hospital. Fortunately, though, I picked up the teeth. Don't ask me what propelled me to do it, and went to the dentist, and I still have my real teeth. I just popped it all back in, but we had to do the root canal and whatnot. Anyhow, part of the loss of the teeth was that one of the teeth sort of bit through the bottom below the bottom of my lip. So sort of the space between the bottom of my lip and my chin area. And that injury ended up costing me the ability to play the flute, because that's exactly where the flute rests when you blow on it. So I couldn't practice for the 2 weeks before the audition. So I got off the plane. I was on crutches. I had some sort of a soft, cast on my knee. It wasn't completely broken, but I had shattered the knee cap. And I got to the audition, and by then I was sort of blowing, but I couldn't really blow right and perfectly. I wasn't getting anywhere near the sound that I usually got. And Julius Baker again auditioned me. Now, the year before when he auditioned me, he thought I was an amazing piccolo player. My flute playing is really good, but there's so many great flute players. And what made me stand out was that I could really play a great piccolo. I had great sound and, could get all the notes really well, and my finger work was great. Everything was really good. And I remember that audition, he said, wow, you could play in the symphony right now. And I was like, yes! So I went to this audition. Now it's after the accident, and I do the audition with him again. And after the audition, he just looked at me and goes, what happened to you? And it just shattered my little heart. I was 18 at the time, And I thought, wow, I really blew it, didn't I? I explained, but no explanations are going to win you anything other than, oh, sorry that happened to you. Because, hey, the next person's going to come in and they didn't have an accident and they're going to play really good and they're going to have deserved an entrance into the school. So I ended up not getting into any of the schools that I auditioned for. And it was heartbreaking. And at that point, when I got home, I knew that I was facing either another year of practicing and hoping and maybe not getting into a school. And I had to really ask myself, is this what I wanted to do? Like, is classical music and playing the flute really the dream that I want? Is this maybe the universe telling me, you know what, girl, you should be looking at something else. And that accident, even though it was like really not a good way for the universe to tell me anything, but maybe it was sort of like a little grand scheme of, the master plan sort of thing. At least that was the only way that I could look at it, so that I could sort of still continue to have some sense of hope and some sense of self-esteem and some sense of, all right, let me redefine my life and my direction and really think about it. So that was a really huge turning point for me. I won't lie, I was really lost for a while because I didn't know if I had made the right choice. Music was the one thing that kept me grounded. It's sort of like my religion. I remember when I was 15 and a camp counselor, she was from Texas and a devout Christian, and she was taking each of us from the cabin for individual talks, and and she goes, "And do you have a faith, Monday?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you, my mother is Buddhist, and I sort of follow probably in that philosophy. But if I had to say what's my spiritual leader, it's probably music. Like, that's my religion." And I sort of really felt that way. Like, it wasn't meant to be a smart aleck answer, but I really, really felt that this is the one thing that always gave me direction, always gave me the answer when I'm in the worst trouble. And not to be corny, but music saves my life. It really did. Anyhow, so I had to rethink everything. While I was at Interlochen Arts Academy, the last semester I was there, I decided to take the chorus group and to sing the alto parts. My voice is actually high. You could probably tell while I'm talking. It's high. I don't have a low voice. I have a high voice, so I'm probably a soprano, but I could sing the alto parts. And the reason I decided to go into the chorus group was because when you play the flute, you're always playing the melody. And I thought it would be good ear training for me to sing the alto parts, which is usually the harmony. And, it might sort of give me a new awareness and perspective to music. So I got into the choral group, and the director's like, "Wow, Monday, you really have a wonderful voice." And I'm like, "Wow, really? Okay." And so he invited me to the more, to the smaller group, which only had a few of the altos, and I got into the group. And that's when I discovered that I actually can sing. So when all of this was unfolding with the accident and, the questioning of if I wanted to really continue doing classical flute, I suddenly realized that, it doesn't have to be flute for me to continue in music. It might actually be the voice. So I started taking lessons, and I started looking into possibilities, starting to reach out and network with other musicians, with music producers, and whatnot. So between the age of 18 until 23, as I worked in a regular, job as a secretary, this is what I did. So that's sort of round one of my story. And now I'm going to go round two, because this was also a very defining moment and what led me to where I am today. So I was 23 years old, and at the time working as the executive assistant to the vice president at the international division of a film distribution company in Los Angeles. So international division means, of course, we have clients from all over the world, and amongst them, Japanese. So we had, I think 2 or 3 film companies who used to come in, and they used to come in maybe once or twice a year, sometimes during, one of those industry things where we're, trying to shop our movies amongst the other distributors, and the film companies would come from all over the world. And sometimes they would just come directly to our office. So it was during the times that they would come to our office that I would handle them as I handled all of the clients. Hello, Mr. Whoever, what can I get you to drink? And okay, Michael will be with you, yada, yada. So, they see me and they see that I'm Asian. So of course, inevitably they ask me, are you? And yes, I'm half Japanese. And Nihongo mo shaberemasu keredomo. And then I would start speaking Japanese to them. So they were just delighted. And eventually it would come to the fact that, oh yes, my mother is Akiyoshi Toshiko-san desu. Yes, my mother is Toshiko Akiyoshi. So they were like, oh my God, you're just like, amazing. We love you. And I ate it all up. It was always nice to have those clients come in. They were really, really sweet and very kind to me. So one day, one of the clients, they came in and they had with them a poet, a writer, poet, and also a lyric writer, this woman. And they invited me out for dinner with them. They said, we have these people with us, and would you like to join us for dinner? Yeah, I'd love to. So I went with them. Now, mind you, at that time, I had already been sending out demos, making demos, doing photo shoots, sending out the photo shoots, trying to find an agent and audition for this. Didn't get it. Audition for that. Didn't get it. So I had already been hunting for things, and they knew this. So when we were at the dinner, they talked to the lyricist, the woman, Aki-san, Aki Yoko-san, Yoko Aki. Very nice woman, very connected, as it turns out, in Japan. So they said, Aki-san, maybe you can do something for Michiru-chan. And I said, yoroshiku onegai shimasu. She goes, well, I can maybe introduce you to some producers, and I know some people. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So I sent her my demo tape and some of my photos. About a week or two later, I get this phone call. And it turns out that it was a representative for a director who was making a film, and they wanted to audition me for the lead. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not an actor. And they said, well, it's actually perfect because this director works only with amateurs, because what he does is he chooses people who are closest to the character, and then he directs them. He doesn't like working with actors. He just likes working with with real people. And I'm like, wow, okay. And it's a part for an opera singer. I'm like, wow, okay. Well, I'm not sure about the opera part, but I'm certainly classically trained and I'm certainly a singer. So why not? So I went to Japan. It turns out that they had already been filming for 8 months without the lead. Without the lead female. I mean, and the funny thing is the name of the film in Japanese is Hikaru Onna, which in English means illuminated woman. It's like, okay, where's the woman? So I auditioned for the part, and I honestly believe that they were so desperate at this point. Like, they have to get somebody now. And I just sort of happened to fill those shoes. So I got the film, and in a matter of 2 weeks, I had to quit my job, pack up my life, break up with the boyfriend. He was not happy. And move to Japan with 2 suitcases. And I got off the plane and immediately went to the shoot, like immediately. It's like, okay, get her in makeup now. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so that was my life for 3 months as we filmed this. And it was one of the most challenging and greatest and scariest time of my life. But that was a massive pivotal moment for me, because it ended up that one of the producers for the film was the owner of a management company and a film company and a music recording company. So that started my career. And fortunately, I did well in the film. It earned me a Best Actress award in 3 different reputable academies in Japan. One of them is sort of like the Oscars of Japan, the Japan Film Academy. So that really put me into a very good leverage that I was able to continue to work and continue to expand and eventually move from acting, which, to be honest, I never felt that I was really talented in, but it was a great challenge and a great opportunity, and I will never complain about it. But it did allow me to move finally into music. And from 1991, I started recording annually. And to this day, that's what I do.
That's amazing. It is. I mean, what an intense story.
Yeah.
How about, where are you going now? Well, let's get from 23 to where you are now. Now,
right.
you
a lot of decades there.
after the movies, you started focusing more on your music career again. Is that correct?
Well, after the acting, I moved on to a lot of different things because in Japan, they're very much about sort of spreading the awareness in as many entertainment platforms as possible. So it meant I was doing radio. I had 2 or 3 different shows at one point. It meant I was doing modeling in commercials and, like brand ambassador sort of thing, which, seemed so weird back then because growing up in America, you just didn't see actors doing that. Now it's a lot more commonplace. You see actors, like reputable actors, doing commercials for, whatever it is, TV or, cars and stuff like that. But back then it wasn't. But that's how we did it in Japan. And I was also a journalist, and would do like interviews for people and would end up on, red carpet events in places or interviewing the princess or the, to-be princess of Japan. Just, some crazy stuff. Things that I just never dreamed that I would be doing. But they were all challenging and interesting and scary.
Your creative process. Go into that a little bit more. I know you write music.
Yes.
Now, do you do that at the piano? What's your process to get to the finished product?
Right. So today I completely compose on the piano. I don't play the piano, to be honest with you. Like, you can't have me sit at a piano bar and be like Alicia Keys and, sing and play along. I can't do it. But I can find my way around the piano to at least find my chords and, and compose that way. And then I write everything down. But back in the day, I used to, do programming. So if I wasn't composing in my head or at the piano, I was at my, there's a thing called the MPC 3000. It's an Akai programming drum machine MIDI instrument. And it would, hook on to a keyboard and also a recording thing so that I could completely do all of my compositions there. And when I would do that, I would approach things sometimes very differently, which is I would compose based on sounds or based on a sample of a chord progression or create a bass line and then start creating around that. So, my creative process in each instance is very different.
Are you strictly a vocalist now, or do you still dabble in instruments?
Well, I do still play the flute. In fact, it's become more and more a thing that I integrate into my performances. I realized at one point that, it's like riding a bike. Once you've learned and you've become one with an instrument, it just never leaves you. So yeah, it's very much a part of me.
Who are your inspirations other than your family?
Well, I have a lot of inspirations. Being a child of the 70s, I was listening to a lot of what was coming out of the top 40. And back then, you had a really wonderful assortment of particularly songwriters. You had Joni Mitchell, Earth, Wind and Fire, Carole King, Steely Dan. It was such a rich time musically. So a lot of my pop inspirations are actually from that era, and many of those artists that came out of there.
Now, you used to do, or you still do, acid jazz. Is that correct?
Well, acid jazz was something that came out in the late 80s and early to mid 90s. And during that time, being a vinyl collector, I would pick up a lot of stuff, not just from America, but from the UK, from Africa, from all over the world. And amongst the stuff that I picked up, I noticed that there was a interesting trend, which also the, Americans were doing, particularly in the hip hop sector. They were, sampling jazz records. It might be a bass line, or it might be, like just a riff or something. And you could smell the jazz in the hip hop, And the same thing was happening in the UK, where there was a lot of like, you could smell it, the little references to jazz. And being a child of jazz, it was something that I really, really was attracted to. And during that time, I was looking for a musical identity. I did not want to be a jazz musician. And to this day, I don't consider myself a jazz musician, even though a lot of people like to define me as a jazz singer, but I don't think I am. I did make a lot of references to it. So acid jazz was sort of my foot in to sort of starting to recognize and identify what it is that I wanted to express. And living in Japan, I was considered one of the pioneers of that scene out there. But I'm certainly not a pioneer of that scene. It was happening all over the world.
Do you have any other artistic qualities? Do you paint?
No. Visually, I'm pretty inept. The only thing I enjoy, and I think, maybe I have a little bit of an eye, is since I started Instagram like 3-4 years ago, I really started to pay attention to composition, like photographic composition. So that's something that I enjoy, but I mean, it's, it's nothing to write home about.
Well, what is your main goal now? What do you have coming up?
Right. So, my last album was recorded 2 years ago. It was called Naked Breath 2. So the 2 would refer that there is a Naked Breath 1. So back in 2003, I decided to do a duet album. I do a lot of performances and recordings with bands, or, everything's programmed, or it's a dance music and whatever it is. But I really wanted to strip everything down so that there's more of a focus on the composition and sort of have more of an acoustic and intimate feel to the sound. So I did my first album back then with a guitarist, Adam Rogers, and he lives in New York, but I often tour in Japan. So when I'm in Japan, I tour with a Japanese guitarist there named Suzuki Yoshihisa. Yoshihisa Suzuki. And he's a wonderful guitarist, like really fantastic. And I told him, one day I really wanted to do a duet album with you. So I did that. I recorded that and released it a couple years ago. That is my most recent recording, and I have been slowly marinating an idea to do a recording. But, these days, record companies are really struggling. I mean, it's really hard for them. CDs don't sell, and what was once a profitable venture for them is now highly, highly risky for them. So when they sign on an artist or a project, they want to know that it's going to sell, that they're going to recoup the money that they're putting into it. And I'm not a commercial artist anymore. I used to be, but now I'm more interested in doing something for the art of music, and for my self-expression, because I think it's honest, and I think that's what I'm about. And when I perform it, people really enjoy it. So, so I know it's not something I'm just doing for myself, like, hey, and people are like, okay, that's a little too weird. I'm not doing anything too left, but it's just not commercial. So because of that, it's really hard to get record labels on board. So, with that said, the project idea is there. I have the producer lined up and, slowly writing towards it. But whether it'll be recorded anytime soon is still up in the air. I am talking to one label in particular who's really interested, but again, it's the monetary factor and getting people on board for that. So while that is, marinating in the background, I'm of course keeping myself musically active, and I'm doing performances right and left. Just last week I finished a performance over at a jazz club in New York called Kitano. And in December, I'm going to be performing for the Japanese American Association, which is a really huge honor. And then, there's always going to be stuff coming up performance-wise. And then I started in the summer to teach. Teaching has been something that I've been really interested in. And I had, in the past, while living in Japan, helped young Japanese singers to sort of, maneuver their way around the recording studio or whatever it is that they're doing, just because I have so much experience at it. And I really believe in passing on any information I have to help the next generation. So when I moved to New York, I was, thinking about the idea of teaching, but there's a lot of really great vocal coaches here. And to be frank, I don't really consider myself that great a singer. Like, I'm sort of a package of, I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, and that's what makes me unique. But as a singer, I'm all right. There's a lot of other singers that are better. So I thought, no, I don't want to teach singing. What is it that I want to teach? What is my niche? And I realized that aside from songwriting, it might be lyric writing. And so I started investigating colleges, universities, conservatories to see if they have such a course. And lo and behold, none that I've found teach lyric writing, which I find really interesting and also understandable, because lyric writing is such a ethereal thing. There's no real right, but there's a whole lot of wrongs. So it's like, how do you teach something that is so ethereal without rules? And so this is something I started working on this summer. I taught a round of classes for one session, and it was quite successful, and the students were super happy, and it taught me a lot. And so I'm going to be doing my next session in the fall, and this is something that I really want to build on, because I really, really love to teach. I really love people, and I love music, and I love the people who are putting their efforts and their hearts into it. And if there's anything that I can do to help pave the way for knowledge or a little inspiration or a seed that's going to grow into something for them, I'm more than happy to nurture that.
Are you done with your film career, or is that something you might be enticed to go back to?
Oh, no, definitely not. Definitely not, as in I don't want to go back to it. It's definitely a certain world. And hey, let's be real. I think the film industry in every country is extremely ageist, and it is all about the looks. I'm 56 years old, and I'm not going to be starting any Botox or any of that to try and enhance my skin or looks in any way. I am what I am, and I'm very proud to be my age, and I'm very proud of all the wrinkles that I've earned, so no, I'm not doing it.
I'm Midnight Agent Raw.
And I'm Okame.
We are the Super Media Bros podcast.
Each week, we give a comedically informative take on movies,
Music,
television,
video games,
and much more.
Put your shades on and listen to all episodes on supermediabrospodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Yeah,
Shades on.
we're off.
Hi there. My name's Jeff Davis. I'm 55 years old. Glad to be on here. Let me tell you how I got a couple real turning points in my life that led me to where I am today. I'm actually a working actor in Los Angeles, from a small town in Maine called Buxton. Not a lot of people leave. It's most people are still there. The people I grew up with are still there. Same homes, same cities, same towns. At an early age, when I believe I was I was 13. A lot of the kids were starting to, small town, they were drinking and starting to smoke pot and smoke cigarettes. You get into that age. And I had my big turning point then. I was sitting in class one day and I got called to the office. something hit me. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. There's this weird, this strange feeling came over me. I don't know what led, to feel this, but when I got to the office, my stepdad's stepdad was there. That was even more strange because why would he be coming to school to pick me up? So as we're driving home, it was just quiet. I was looking out the window and not saying much. And his name was Elmer, and Elmer's driving along, and he was, it was a tough thing for him, and he's an older gentleman, nice man. And all of a sudden he looks at me and he says, "I suppose you wonder why I had to come pick you up." And I just kind of sat there and didn't say too much and tried to figure it out. I said, "Did something happen to Mom?" And there was a long pause, and he says, "No." He says, "It's your brother." And my brother had gotten into some, he was a good kid. He was 17 and had started getting into drugs a little bit and alcohol, and not a bad kid, but got into something that messed him up and caused him to be schizophrenic. And he had gone into a hospital at the time, and they released him and sent him home and said, told my mom not to worry, he's not suicidal. But she left and went to the grocery store that day, and when she came home, she found him, and he had shot himself. At that point in my life, my older brother, finding out that he committed suicide, and what I saw the people around me go through, my parents, grandparents, all my relatives, and myself, and it took me from being a kid to being a little man overnight. I went from a 13-year-old to a 20-year-old in the way I acted and what things I did. From then on, when other kids were acting up, I'm like, why would you want to do that? Would you want someone to do that to you? If somebody was smoking pot, I'd say, no thanks. I didn't judge people for what they did. I knew that it would affect me and my mom and my dad. They'd gone through enough. They didn't need me heading down a road that was going to affect their lives. So I took what I saw, and I just went in a completely different direction than what my brother had gone. And, not that I was a saint, I was still a teenager, but I had a chip on my shoulder. I always felt I had to prove myself. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't cause trouble, but I got in a lot of fights and stuff. So there was some anger inside me. And luckily at an early age, when I realized that wasn't going to get me anywhere, probably in my early 20s, I grew out of that. And at that point, I was not sure where my life was going to take me. Decided not to go to college because I couldn't see my parents spending money when I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I, worked in a grocery store, and then I got a job as an electrician for a while, learned that. And then my stepdad worked in a paper mill, which was a pretty steady gig. So I thought, I'll try to get in there. Got in there. It's a union job, pays good, steady pay, but I hated it. I just couldn't do it. I wasn't happy. Life was good. I had a girlfriend, had a great family, was making good money. So I left that. I saved some money and started a business, started a store. And my girlfriend was a bodybuilder, so we did fitness and supplements and clothing and stuff. And still something was missing. I couldn't put my finger on it. And then one day a friend said, why don't you take this acting class? And I took an acting class with this guy named Mark Pentalescu in Portland, Maine. I kind of got a little bit of a bug there, and I did a play. And but still, being from a small town in Maine, you don't think that could ever lead anywhere. You just thought, well, that's fun. Maybe I'd like to do more of this. So then I was sitting in my store one day, and I just was watching TV. This was probably 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year later. Still, life was good, but something was missing. And this young lady named Laura Bonarigo was an actress who was in the play that I was in. I saw her on TV, and she had gone to New York, got an agent, and landed on a soap opera. And that's when, boom, it hit me. That's what I want to do. That's where I belong. Not New York, of course, because I knew it was going to be a struggle. So I headed to Los Angeles. But I spent the next 6 months or so selling off everything, talking it over with my parents and discussing. I was 28 years old, I guess, by the time I decided to get out of town and head to LA and pursue what I didn't even realize was a dream and a passion, but had become one. So along the way, I stopped at my dad, my birth father, who was always in my life, but they had moved to Arizona. So I actually flew from Maine to Arizona, and I spent a month with him just catching up. And then, I had already planned on when I was getting to Los Angeles. So I went to a swap meet in Phoenix, Arizona, and I bought a car and a set of golf clubs and drove to Los Angeles. And be honest with you, I was a little lost. I come from a really small town, so it was kind of overwhelming. Not sure if I did the right thing, but I jumped right into it. I found a place to live. I found a job. I worked in a video store making $6 an hour, I think, enough to put gas in my car and pay for a room in someone's house. I rented a room. And I just started sending out pictures and, getting my headshots done. I just started knocking on doors and doing whatever I could, acting in student films and anybody who would listen to me. I still wasn't sure if this was what I was going to do, but then one day, I suppose I'd been out there about a year or so, and I had about, $10 in my pocket, I think. It was rough. I wasn't making a lot of money. And LA's an expensive place. So I was kind of down and sad, and I went into a Johnny Rockets, and I sat there and I bought a burger and fries and a shake, and I just started tearing up. I looked around, and I just, all of a sudden, this is where I belong. I don't know what it is, why, but this is where I'm not going to leave here until I become what I came to be. And that was 27 years ago, I guess. And from that moment, when I realized this, I was staying in Los Angeles. I think about 2 years later, still struggling, I met my future wife, and within a year we had a child, so that slowed the progress down. But she was very, very supportive and knew that, I wasn't happy unless I was doing what I was doing. So falling back on what I had learned to do, I became a handyman in Los Angeles to help pay the bills, and it led me flexibility to pursue my acting career. And my wife, she at the time was going to college and was wanting to be a lawyer, but she decided she would rather be a mother, so she found a way also to make money. She became a swim instructor, going house to house private. So we worked for ourselves, so we were sitting pretty good. That just was the beginning of the rest of my life, and here I am, been married 24 years, 2 amazing boys, and I'm still plugging away and auditioning and acting and living the dream, as they say.
You said that there were 2 life events that really mean a lot to you. What was the other one?
Well, the second one was the day that I was I came to LA, and I was just just didn't know, did I make a right decision? I didn't really know people, and that's the day that I was in Johnny Rockets, and I just was ready to, I didn't know if I was going to go home or what. I wasn't, it wasn't this acting thing. I didn't know if that was really what I was supposed to be doing, but something just came over me that day, and I don't know. I can't explain it. It was just this wave of emotions, and I said, I felt, even though I was lonely, I was broke, and I was struggling to find my place in LA, I just felt like I was where I belonged. And I guess that was, so it wasn't really a big life event, but it was for me. It's what kept me on path to follow my dream and to stay in Los Angeles. And I think that kind of led to me, taking the chance and marrying, getting married and settling down with someone who was actually from here. Yeah, that was my second big life-changing moment.
Why don't you talk a little bit about your acting career, kind of go into detail, maybe tell some stories or anecdotes about what you've been through.
Well, early on, like I said, I didn't study, so I didn't come to LA as an actor. I just come to LA as someone who wanted to act. I had done very little. I did like that one class at a play. So I'm not your typical actor, I guess. But I treated it as a business right from the get-go. I worked hard. I mean, it's been my life since I began. I don't do anything halfway. When I do something, I jump in, and I learn by doing. So, I mean, I was lucky early on. I met some good people. When I first came to LA, I did, some background work and some student films, and worked a lot of movies for free just to get resume and experience. And that's how you learn, I think, by doing. So I just continued on, and I mean, I was lucky. I worked with people. I met people in the video store that were actors. I met this great guy named Christophe St. John, who was on The Young and the Restless. He recently passed away, but a really nice guy who helped lead me a little bit, and met some other actors. As a stand-in, I got to work with Kevin Costner on Waterworld, and that was a really good experience. And it just everything, I worked with Ewan McGregor and Josh Brolin, and these things kind of kept me going, and meeting these people and talking to them and how they had, overcome things to get where they were. And eventually I started, booking commercials, which actually helps pay the mortgage. Commercials pay pretty well. They can. And I started booking some, a line here, a line there on some TV shows. But I was taking my children to school and then dropping them off. Then I would go to a handyman job and start working, and then I'd have to leave my tools and run to an audition, then run back, get my tools. I would run and pick up my kids, and I was just harebrained, scatterbrained. So I didn't even realize it at the time. But my youngest, when he turned 15, he got his driver's license. All of a sudden, at this point I had been, 20 years struggling, and I booked job 2-3 a year, and they were getting better. But I still wasn't booking at the rate that I really wanted. So once he turned 16 and got his driver's license, it opened a whole new door. I would go to an audition an hour early. I would sit there and concentrate on my role and get into the character. And I just started booking. So in the last, he's 21 now. So in the last 5 or 6 years, I've probably done more work than I did in the first, 20. So that's, my acting career. I mean, in that time, lately I've been, I've worked on shows like The West Wing as early on, and The Mentalist, and recently Castle, Code Black. I've been very lucky. I've worked on, some big feature films, Wind Talkers with Nick Cage. I just worked on American Assassin a couple years ago with Michael Keaton, and then this year I just did a couple of independent movies, which gives me a chance to even play a bigger role in a smaller film. I just was in Texas shooting a couple films. I finally got to do my first Western, which was really exciting. So yeah, as an actor, like I said, I've been lucky enough to work on some really good projects. And one actually led me in a new direction. I worked with Wes Craven on The New Nightmare, which was actually one of my first acting roles. And it kind of came around full circle this past year. I got a call from someone in Ohio who was doing a Toy Con, which is kind of like a Comic-Con type event, but they sell tables for vendors to come in and sell collectible toys. And out of the blue, I think he got my name from IMDb or something. He called me up and said, would you be interested in signing autographs at a table? And I was thinking, why would anyone want my autograph? I'm not quite at that level. And he said, no, we're in a small town, and it's a horror themed, and you were in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and I think that people would love to meet you. So I went there, and through that show, I met some great people who were young filmmakers in Ohio, and they approached me, and we had like a meet and greet, and they mentioned that they wanted to do a movie, and did I have anything that I was doing. And I had a script that someone had sent me that said actually a horror film, and I told them about it. And then 2 months go by, and I get a call from them, and they're like, "Look, how would you come back to Ohio and shoot that movie if we could raise the money?" So that got me to thinking, how can I do this? So this past year, I've been going back and forth with them, putting together this horror film that will be my directorial debut. I'm going to go to this little town of Van Wert, Ohio, and we're going to use a lot of local people. It's a low-budget independent, and we're going to bring in a few people from Los Angeles that have a little bit of a name, but will work on a lower scale. And I'm going to jump into another chapter of my life by head over heels and see if I can't direct a movie and take me to a different level. I don't foresee myself becoming a director. I'm an actor, but as an artist, I think it's just another way to express myself, and I really look forward to jumping into it and getting a chance to work with other actors and hopefully help form them and lead them in the direction that I came, and let them know that they can climb the same ladder and eventually become what I would call a working actor. I mean, I'm not a movie star, but I've been able to do it for 20 some years and continue to do it. So I consider myself a blue collar working actor. So now it's hopefully I can help lead the next generation into doing what I'm doing and what I enjoy so much.
How about talk a little bit more about directing? I know you said you're not really shooting to be a director, but what I'm interested in is what the process is like. I mean, people hear the word director, but I don't think they realize how involving that is.
Oh, right. Well, as a director, I'm also producing, and it's a learning experience every day because from the get-go, I have to put together a product package. I guess we call it a business package to help raise the money, so the funding for it, and that we can show people that what we're doing and why we think it's a good idea, what the story's about. We have to put together a crew. That process is tough, but I did find people I've worked with here, and then I've got people there putting together a crew. But we had to shoot a teaser, a little trailer teaser, short little piece that just kind of gives the feel of the movie to try to help also pitch it to the possible investors, shows them kind of what we can do and what we want to do and the feel of the movie. So that's kind of the producer. As a director, I mean, like I said, I'm learning every day, but I've got to really just read the script. I've got to know every inch of it. I'm learning about camera angles, and I'm talking to my director of photography, my cameraman. So we have to learn how to take it from page to put it up on the screen. Like I said, I've been doing it for 20 some years, watching it and being on set and seeing what other people do, but actually being on the other side, and now it's my project. I've really had to, we're probably not shooting for another 6 months, and hopefully by then I will feel comfortable enough to be able to show up and pull it off. It's just, there's so much more to, as an actor, you memorize your lines and you find your character, you figure out who you're supposed to be, who you are, and you show up on set and you do it. The director will tell you, okay, let's try it this way or that way. But now it's my chance as a director to guide these other actors and the camera and the flow of the film, and make it actually, once it becomes a movie, it's got to get up on screen and actually flow. The story has to be told through the moving pictures. So it's scary. It's scary but exciting. I mean, I think for me it's a great next step, and I'm looking forward to it and relishing the opportunity to do it.